Middle grade series are so underrated and nobody talks about them, which makes sense because I assume everybody on BookTube is an adult, but I've read a lot of middle grade series when I was very young and I wanted to talk about them and recommend them to you guys. I just want to disclaim, a majority of these books I read when I was really young, so some of them I don't really remember what they are about super clearly, but I tried to explain them to the best of my abilities, which is why some of my explanations are very short while the other ones are longer. The reason why I like middle grade series is that oftentimes as a young child, obviously because it's aimed at a younger audience, you learn a lot from it. You learn about friendship. Along with that, you have magic, My Little Pony. But there were things that I learnt from reading these middle grade series, but they're just so nostalgic to me. And if you like fantasy, honestly, I think half of these middle grade series, their world building is probably better than half of the books that are written for YA. So just because they're middle grade, okay, don't discriminate against them. I have these two books from the Delto Quest series, and these are hefty, okay? They're hefty, but they're actually really short. Emily Rodda, who is the author of these books, her list of books are so great. They're all so short, but they are set in this fantasy world where we usually have this male main character who is overlooked and underestimated. The plots in this book usually involve puzzles and quests and riddles. And because they are so short, they're really easy to fly through, but they're also super fun. Again, when saying that they're short, I mean that they are very short. The reason why I'm saying this is because it shows that you do not need to have a really thick book for the world building to be amazing and to have an entertaining book. I feel like nowadays, there are so many books that have 500 pages and most of them are just purely fluff. I originally learned about this series through an anime that I watched when I was younger, which is also called the Delto Quest. And I honestly didn't even know that there was a book, but once I found out, I obviously read it. To describe what this series is about, we have this world which is ruled over by the Shadow Lord, who, as you can guess, is a very dangerous character, and the Shadow Lord has made this world a very difficult place to live. It's very corrupt, people are unsafe, there are a lot of creatures and monsters. Our main character Leaf goes on to this quest to obtain the 7 gems that are spread around Deltora, and gaining these 7 gems will give him the opportunity to finally overtake the Shadow Lord. To retrieve these gems, obviously they have to travel throughout Deltora. We meet a bunch of different characters, some of them endearing, some of them absolutely terrifying. There's just a bunch of tribulations because these are very important gems and they are obviously guarded by someone that they have to go through. I'm pretty sure we have the original Delto Quest series, and then we have 3 other series. For example, this one is Delto Quest 2, which includes the same characters, but in a storyline after the end of the first series. And then we have another one after this one, so we get to see the characters grow up and where they end up. I would also recommend reading some of Emily Rodda's other books, for example, Rowan Turin, the Three Doors trilogy. She overall just has a really good series. I've actually read most of her series and I've enjoyed all of them. The series of Unfortunate Events I think can be also considered YA, but because I've read it around the time where I would be considered middle grade, I just consider it middle grade. This also has a movie adaptation and a Netflix adaptation, so you may have heard about it before. But it's about the 3 Baudelaire orphans where their house burnt down, including their parents. They then get sent to different guardians, and unfortunately, as you can imagine, it's called a series of unfortunate events. They just do not get rest. There is this man called Count Olaf as well who is chasing after them because he wants to become their guardian to obtain their inheritance. So they try to escape from his clutches while they solve this deeper mystery that involves their parents and this secret society. As I mentioned, it's called Series of Unfortunate Events. Be prepared that a lot of very frustrating things happen. The Book of Lies is written by James Maloney, which I've read also quite a few of his books. I've read the Tamerlane series, or I guess the 𝐦𝐮𝐬𝐢𝐬 series, which was one of my favorite YA series. I did reread it recently and I was like, this wasn't as good as I remembered it being, but you know what, I still enjoyed it. The Book of Lies takes place where our male MC wakes up in an orphanage, but he has no memories of, not his past life, but he doesn't remember anything from when he woke up in this orphanage. He discovers the Book of Lies, which is a book where you can erase and rewrite memories. And as you can imagine from a middle grade series, it explores ideas of identity. I do remember that there were some, I wouldn't say they were, I don't know if they were like wild plot twists, but there was some fun plot twists. Nevermore, unfortunately, the last book hasn't released in the series, and I don't know when it's going to be released because it has been years and it has still yet to come out. But this is about Morgan Crow, who is said to be a cursed child, and because of that, nobody in her town really likes her. They're afraid of her, and she's blamed for every misfortune in the town. She is doomed to die on her 11th birthday. Instead, she goes to this secret city called Nevermore, and then she has to go through these trials to earn her place in the Wondrous Society. The School for Good and Evil can also be considered YA, and it has had a Netflix adaptation released, which the movie I think was pretty good. The School for Good and Evil is about two best friends, Sophie and Agatha. Sophie wants to go to the School for Good and Evil, and she thinks that she's going to end up in the School for Good, while Agatha is going to end up in the School for Evil because Sophie is a pretty princess, Agatha is a hag. That's basically how everyone describes her. Imagine their surprise when it's the opposite. It's obviously based on fairy tales and daughters and sons of fairy tale characters, but also we have this thing called the historian who is writing the fairy tales. I will be honest, this series was a little bit frustrating because Sophie as a character is annoying, and the whole entire time they are fighting over two boys, which sucks, but it was still a fun read, and I feel like it's worth it to read it once. Don't reread it because I've reread it multiple times, and that honestly, that wasn't worth it. Charlie Bone, I'll be honest, I read this ages ago, so I don't really remember what it's about. I actually don't remember half of what these books are about. Charlie Bone discovers that he has the magical ability to hear people in photos, and he gets sent to this boarding school called Blaw's Academy, which is a school for children with special talents. But this school is not a good school. It's not a good school at all, and there is this plot that is happening that he and his friends have to uncover. That is what I assume happens in this book. I'm sorry, with this one, I don't really remember that much of what it's about. It is a long series, and I feel like I should reread it. I'm pretty sure I've reread this series multiple times, but it was when I was a child, so unfortunately I don't really remember that much of what this book is about. We then have the Magisterium, which is written by both Cassandra Clare and Holly Black. So you know those two authors, they're very popular, but I don't know if this is their first middle grade series, but I actually really enjoyed this one. So Magisterium is a school for young mages, and the main character, he actually didn't really want to get into this school, but he ends up mistakenly passing the test, and then he gets accepted, and then he goes to the school. He gets involved in elemental magic, strange creatures. Again, he is in the school where he is training. They go through quests, they have this friendship group, and I remember really liking this one. Obviously, if I didn't, I wouldn't include it on this list. The Adventures Guild is the last series that I'm going to be recommending, and it's actually a series that I've read quite recently. I have a whole video about it. I really enjoyed this one. I thought that as the series continued, it got even better, but to explain the Adventures Guild, think Attack on Titan. We have this city within these walls. Outside these walls is a dangerous place, and the Adventures Guild is the only guild that can go out and explore outside of the wall and fight these monsters. The second and third book, really good. The plot and the twists that happens, I really enjoyed this one. That is basically all the middle grade series that I'm going to be recommending, but I definitely recommend if you have kids or if you yourself just want some nostalgic fantasy series, I definitely recommend these ones. I would also like to add a majority of these, the romance, chef's kiss, because they are children, so there isn't a lot of romance, but when there is romance, it is very slow burn, and as a child I love that. Besides the School for Good and Evil, the School for Good and Evil, you just gotta read it to experience it, okay? It's a wild book. It honestly is a wild series. Anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and all that jazz, and I will see you guys in another one. Bye!